Thank you very much, Delegate Solomon. Good evening, everybody. My name is Matt Baker. If somebody can give me a good old thumbs up that you are seeing a slideshow, great, thank you. Much appreciated for the opportunity tonight. I want to thank Senator Waldstreicher and Delegates Carr, Shetty, and Solomon for setting this up. We certainly appreciate the opportunity to bring you all up to speed on our Maryland 185 corridor needs analysis. Quickly, just want to introduce our team here. I'm Matt Baker. I'm Regional and Intermodal Planning Chief here in our Baltimore headquarters. And joining me also are David Schley, our Regional Planner for Montgomery County, Candice Holford, our statewide bicycle and pedestrian coordinator and leader of our context-driven initiative, Joe Mogus, our Assistant District Engineer for Traffic in our District 3 office covering Montgomery County, Derek Gunn, our Deputy District Engineer there in District 3, and Chris Bishop, our Community Relations Manager at District 3. So in hopefully record time, we want to give you an overview of what we've been up to so we can leave a healthy amount of time for Q&A. So a quick overview of what we're going to discuss tonight. How did we arrive at investigating this corridor, some of which was alluded to by the delegation just moments ago? What approach did we use? It's a 4.5-mile long corridor. How did we break it down? What types of information did we incorporate into our analysis? From that, what recommendations are we suggesting? And how are we going about advancing those recommendations? Connecticut Avenue is a complex corridor. There's no question about it. Depending on where you're traveling, there are as many as 73,000 vehicles each day that we need to work to accommodate safely. And yet we also need to provide safe access and mobility for more vulnerable users, the pedestrians, cyclists, transit users, and others who use the corridor but are not driving. With the Purple Line arriving in the next few years and continued development in specific areas, we know demand will continue to only increase. With that complex mix of users in mind, how did we approach this needs analysis? First, the analysis creates a vision, albeit a flexible one, and I want to emphasize that flexibility, for a corridor that better supports and balances access and mobility for all users. Paying special attention to those more vulnerable users, a key point for M.SHA that our context-driven initiative has been placing ever-increasing emphasis on. Connecticut Avenue also is a long and varied corridor. Our goal has been to strike the right balance based on the unique qualities of 6 subsegments. We'll get into that in a moment. Knowing that what might be appropriate in Chevy Chase or in Kensington probably isn't as appropriate, say, near the Beltway. Ultimately, our goal has been to propose a menu of preliminary concepts that can be advanced as resources allow, and that do so using little and ideally no additional rights of way beyond what SHA already controls. Some may move forward independently, some as a package, some may not move forward at all. The typical sections will show in a bit, show an ultimate vision for those various segments. I want to reemphasize that these are preliminary in nature. Getting to that point where a recommendation can become a reality will require, one, public input. That's why we're here tonight and tomorrow night. It requires that political buy-in that was discussed earlier by Senator Waldstreicher, and it requires money. Let's be frank. So, through those various processes, various recommendations could move into detailed design and engineering, where M.SHA would undertake a much more in-depth investigation into specific needs and specific solutions at various locations. Though I will note, and we'll get into this momentarily, some of those very near-term, lower-cost elements already are moving forward, and Joe Mogus is going to discuss those. I also mentioned context-driven, which heavily informed M.SHA's approach to this needs analysis. Candice Holford, our statewide bike and ped coordinator, is here tonight. And she leads that initiative, and she's going to give you a very high-level overview of its key goals. Candice.
Thanks, Matt. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
All right. So as you mentioned, understanding context was a guiding component of this needs analysis. Wow. And SHA's 2020 context guide outlines the framework for identifying what context zone you're in Maryland, and then applying the relevant engineering safety countermeasure. The guide states that planners and designers should understand the appropriate balance of access and mobility, as Matt said, by classifying the land use as urban core, urban center, suburban activity center, traditional town center, suburban.
I think we lost Candice.
I think I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so the 6 contexts ranging from urban core to rural, and then also remembering that the most important part of the framework is that we're addressing all user groups. So bicyclists, pedestrians, and motorists. This allows SHA to prioritize the vulnerable users, where safe access is paramount, and also encourage predictable driver behavior where mobility is critical. So I think Matt is going to get into what the existing conditions are along the corridor, and what our needs analysis showed us in terms of context.
Absolutely. Thanks, Candice. And I'll note that kid shares my birthday, so he's forgiven. With context driven in mind, we used a number of data points to better understand the existing conditions along Connecticut Avenue. What you're seeing on the screen is a very cursory just illustration of some of those data points. But those included pedestrian level of comfort, which is a tool actually developed by our colleagues at Montgomery Planning that we were able to pull into this analysis. Bicycle level of traffic stress, which helps describe the amount of discomfort cyclists feel using existing facilities. Access to transit, mostly in this case that's WMATA buses, but also some select county ride-on services do use the 185 corridor. Of course, vehicular traffic levels and conditions were taken into account, and crash history, which has come up here already today. We took a look throughout the corridor at that crash history, both the hard data, but also our awareness of specific severe crashes in recent years that are certainly in our mind. Understanding the corridor is long and varied, and incorporating both that existing conditions data and our context-driven approach, M.SHA chose to break the larger corridor into 6 subsegments. Tonight, we're here to dive a little deeper into the first 3 segments, all of which context-driven classifies as suburban activity centers. So the first one, and like I said, we'll dive here in a minute, that's from Chevy Chase Circle up to Bradley Lane, which is primarily residential, of course. And then the second segment is from Bradley up to East West Highway, again, primarily residential. And then the third segment we'll talk about tonight is from East West Highway north to Jones Bridge Road, which is definitely a little more varied in nature. You've got the Country Club, you've got the Purple Line, you've got ongoing redevelopment. So it's a little more complex in some ways than the first 2, but also at the same time, it's just its own unique beast. So let's get into the actual segments themselves and some of the recommendations that are, or I should say, maybe the vision that our analysis identifies. So segment 1, as I mentioned, from Chevy Chase Circle to Maryland 191 or Bradley Lane, there on the north side of the Chevy Chase Club. Today, that of course accommodates 6 lanes of traffic, 3 in each direction. The segment is stressful for cyclists without dedicated facilities. There are also limited crossing opportunities for pedestrians, making transit access difficult. Of the 6 segments between the District of Columbia and Kensington, segment 1 actually has the highest crash rate, although a lot of that is due to speeds, and a lot of that is, they're not necessarily severe crashes, luckily, but they're crashes nonetheless. So what we know is how can we better accommodate all users? The needs analysis identifies an ultimate vision, if supported by additional analysis and design, in which a through lane in each direction is removed and replaced by a buffered bicycle lane, which would build on efforts underway farther south in the District of Columbia. Where today dedicated left turn lanes are sparse, and as I recall correctly, maybe non-existent in that segment, significant, and which frankly that causes a significant amount of backup. The segment here, we are proposing more dedicated left turn lane facilities to remove those turning vehicles out of mainline traffic, reducing that backup. We are also proposing lowering the speed limit, both to increase safety and to improve traffic flow. Segment 2 from Bradley, again, north up to east-west highway. Today, that also, of course, accommodates 6 lanes of traffic, 3 in each direction. Much like segment 1, segment 2 is stressful for cyclists with no dedicated facilities. Also like segment 1, again, limited crossing opportunities for pedestrians, making transit access that much more difficult. So, again, how can we better accommodate all users? The needs analysis identifies an ultimate vision, again, if supported by additional analysis and design in which a through lane is removed and replaced by a buffered bicycle lane, which would build on the recommendations from segment 1. And like in segment 1, M.SHA would introduce dedicated left turn lanes to remove turning vehicles from the through lanes. Again, that's a significant cause of backups. Similarly to segment 1, also proposing lowering speed limits to increase safety and to improve traffic flow. And then segment 3, where traffic is considerably higher than segments 1 or 2, in some cases almost double. So M.SHA is proposing to retain 6 lanes and provide a dedicated side path along the east side of the roadway for cyclists and pedestrians, albeit there's a small segment under the purple line that is proposed as a cycle track instead. These recommendations are in line with those included in Montgomery Planning's County Bicycle Master Plan. In addition, in this more open segment, M.SHA also suggests lowering speed limits and investigating local options to encourage automated speed enforcement, further examining options to restrict right turns on red, and introducing leading pedestrian intervals at intersections to give pedestrians a head start when crossing the street. And that's going to be especially important with the higher pedestrian volumes we will expect resulting from the purple line. So a little counterintuitively, I'm going to work backwards from long-term strategies to near-term strategies. You'll see the rationale here. So overall, M.SHA is recommending a wide range of potential upgrades. All of these will require thoughtful and intentional investments over the long term. There simply are more needs than resources, so we're going to have to prioritize and focus those investments. But this analysis serves as a head start, if you will, providing M.SHA and local jurisdictions a coordinated menu from which to work to improve the corridor. Piecing investments together over the long term, we can achieve full build out of this grander vision. And again, based on more community input, based on that political buy-in. This is not I wanted to emphasize again the flexibility of the document. But that grander vision providing safe access and mobility for all users throughout this key corridor. In the long term, SHA's menu includes recommendations to, in some cases, modify roadway cross sections, including, as we noted earlier, implementing road diets where appropriate to accommodate dedicated bicycle facilities or permit more width for pedestrians outside the curb. It also proposes recommendations to make geometric changes, including bump outs at intersections and reducing curb radii. That means slowing turning vehicles, making them pay more attention to pedestrians and cyclists, increasing safety for both pedestrians and cyclists, and in some cases, rethinking or adding signals at strategic locations. Again, this is a pretty high-level overview. I definitely encourage everybody to take a deeper dive into the document online, and we'll provide a link here in a moment, so that you can look at each individual intersection. Where do you live? Where do you travel? How do you get to the grocery store? What types of things are we talking about closest to you? Getting a little closer to today, in the medium term, we're talking about things like upgrading crosswalks to more visible striping. You've maybe already seen this in some locations. Traditionally, we kind of use the old 2 bars across the street. Turns out modern research has shown us best practices in the industry now show that what we call continental striping, but some people probably call piano keys, some people call it like a ladder, that's much more visible to motorists, and that clues them in that much more that they need to be paying attention to people potentially crossing the street. So we've been rolling those out actually all over the Washington region in the last 2 years as resurfacing projects and striping projects have been available to us. We're also talking about improving signage to increase motorist advance awareness of the need to be, either slowing down and paying more attention to high pedestrian area, etc. As well as modifying signals to improve operations and increase pedestrian safety. There's a lot of medium-term strategies proposed in the document. We are looking to prioritize those based on a couple factors. What's closest to schools? Schools are big pedestrian generators, and obviously some of our most vulnerable users of our system, as well as bus stops. And we want to keep a focus also on those locations where we know there's been a higher or more serious crash history. And then in the nearest term, and some of these are already moving along, we're recommending things like using paint to extend curbs, lessening crossing distances at key intersections. Again, some of that crosswalk upgrading I've talked about to make them more visible to motorists, and then upgrade signage, including signage to emphasize various legal requirements, be that restricting right turns on red, be that requiring motorists to yield to pedestrians, etc. So as I mentioned, absolutely encourage you to take a deeper dive into the needs analysis report available on our website. Again, link to come. As I've really only given a very high level analysis or summary here. But before we get to that point, I want to ask Joe Mogus, who again is with our District 3 office and leads up our traffic section there, to walk us through a number of the near-term strategies M.SHA is already working on as we speak. So, Joe.
Thanks, Matt. Can you hear me? Can I get a thumbs up?
You're good.
Okay, very good. Good evening, everyone. Once again, my name is Joseph Mogus. I am M.SHA District 3's new Assistant District Engineer for Traffic for Montgomery County. Tonight, I'd like to share some updates regarding M.SHA District 3 improvements implemented in the past year or so, as well as forthcoming improvements in the next 12 months or so. As you will see, there are several improvements suggested by the corridor needs analysis that were implemented during the study. M.SHA District 3 is continuously developing and implementing projects for various improvements for all roadway users, including pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorists. These improvements vary from simple tree trimming to improve sight distance, to signing and marking, and to signal improvements. As you can see, I've labeled some of these improvements in numerical order from the southernmost point to the left of your screen, all the way to the northernmost point to the right of your screen. Sorry. It's screen froze. Can you still hear me? Okay. Sorry, 1 second. So we'll start with the first starred item labeled number 1 and proceed from there. Next slide, please. As you can see on this slide, our first location is Maryland 185 Connecticut Avenue at Lenox Street. Currently, we have a hazard identification beacon, or HIB, across the south leg of the subject intersection. For various reasons, following a series of reviews and analyses, we are happy to inform you all that we have found it appropriate to upgrade the existing HIB to a pedestrian hawk signal. Additionally, we will be upgrading the existing crosswalks to our new high visibility or continental crosswalk marking standard.
So I can't see the slides, sorry.
I can see them.
Is anybody else having difficulty seeing the slides?
They look great. Absolutely great.
I can hear.
No problem.
We will be sharing the slides. Actually, we already have with the delegation, and we can certainly reach out. But we also have contact information at the end. And if you would like to reach out, we're more than happy to get you the slides. If you're not,
please tell us what a hawk signal is.
Joe, can you explain a hawk signal, please?
A hawk signal is a pedestrian I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question. A hawk signal is a pedestrian activated beacon along 185. So it'll be actuated. Someone will press a push button. They'll get a signal. Motorists will stop and they'll cross. So it's an upgrade from the existing. I apologize. I didn't hear that. I didn't know it was directed at me. So I'll continue with the presentation. So the construction for that, it's okay. You don't have to go back. The construction for that hawk signal and the continental crosswalk improvements is slated to be completed by the end of this year, 2022. So that's exciting news. That will be coming relatively quickly. So here we have our next slide, Maryland 185 Connecticut Avenue at Maryland 191 Bradley Lane. At this location, we will be installing what we call R1015s, which are turning traffic yield to pedestrians signs at the intersection. We will also perform tree trimming on the southeast corner in order to improve sight lines for motorists and pedestrians alike. Additionally, we will be upgrading the existing crosswalks to our new high visibility continental crosswalk marking standard. And lastly, we will be installing advanced warning signing along the eastbound Maryland 191 Bradley Lane approach to Maryland 195 in order to improve safety along the west leg crosswalk in the subject intersection. The implementation schedule for these improvements is slated to be complete by this summer 2022. Next slide, please. Excellent. As you can see on this slide, our next location is Maryland 185 Connecticut Avenue at Rosemary Street and Raymond Street. We will be installing our 1015s again, turning traffic yield to pedestrian signs at this intersection. Additionally, we will be upgrading the existing crosswalk to our new high visibility or continental crosswalk marking standard. The implementation schedule for these improvements are slated to be complete by this fall 2022. Next slide. And as you can see on this slide, our next location is Maryland 185 Connecticut Avenue at Taylor Street. We have recently upgraded the existing crosswalks to our new continental crosswalk marking standard. We have also recently installed new stop lines for both northbound and southbound Maryland 185 approaches. And we will be installing stop here for pedestrian signing at this intersection. The implementation schedule for these improvements is slated to be complete by this summer 2022. And next slide, please. So here we have the pedestrian crossing. This is located along Maryland 185 Connecticut Avenue between Woodbine Street and Virgilia Street / Williams Lane. We will be installing stop here for pedestrian signing at this intersection, or I'm sorry, at this crosswalk. We will also be installing in-road pedestrian signing to further enhance pedestrians' comfort crossing the roadway. We will also upgrade the existing crosswalks to our new continental crosswalk marking standard. And the implementation schedule for these improvements are actually more in line with fall 2022. I think I made a little typo on this one. So this one's coming sooner than later. All righty, thank you, Matt. This next intersection is Maryland 185 Connecticut Avenue at Leland Street. Similarly, we will be installing R1015 turning traffic yield pedestrian signing at this intersection, and we will be upgrading the existing crosswalks to our new high visibility continental crosswalk marking. And the implementation schedule for this as well is fall 2022. And here you can see we have Maryland 185 Connecticut Avenue from Chevy Chase Circle, or the DC line, all the way up to Maryland 410 East-West Highway. As you may already know, we have previously lowered the speed limit along this section from 35 to 30 miles per hour. I just felt it relevant with respect to this town hall or meeting, just to bring this issue up as well. Next slide, please. And we have Maryland 185 at Dunlop Street. We will be installing again R1015 turning traffic yield to pedestrian signing, and we will be upgrading the existing crosswalks to our new high visibility or continental crosswalk marking standard. Once again, implementation schedule fall 2022. Here we have Maryland 185 Connecticut Avenue at Manor Road. We have recently installed do not block intersection signing along the northbound Maryland 185 approach to the subject intersection to improve safety for pedestrians and motorists. As you already know, and as you can see in the lower right portion of the image in this slide, the developer project is well underway. This project will incorporate pedestrian facilities along its frontage, namely a shared use path and other aesthetic improvements. I should also note that the Purple Line station will be constructed just north of Chevy Chase Lake Drive, which is south of the image you're looking at here. Next slide. And here we have Maryland 185 at Jonesbridge Road and Kensington Road. We will be installing new stop here on red signing for the westbound Jonesbridge Road approach to improve safety for pedestrians and motorists. That is the approach on the right side of the intersection. We will also be extending that stop line to ensure that no motorists proceed through that intersection to turn right on red. As you already know, I'm sorry, can you just go back a little bit? Okay, as you already know, the BRAC project is well underway along Jonesbridge Road through this intersection. That project will incorporate pedestrian facilities along the south side of Jones Bridge Road, namely a shared use path and other aesthetic improvements as well. And of course, there will also be an ADA compliant sidewalk on the north side. So there will be full pedestrian mobility here with an upgraded shared use path on the south side of Jones Bridge Road. Should also note that the additional third left turn lane will be constructed along the eastbound Jones Bridge Road approach to the subject intersection. This will serve to improve capacity and safety along this intersection and the Jones Bridge Road corridor westerly towards Maryland 255 Rockville Pike. I'd just like to take this time to state that we always have ongoing studies and initiatives. So please do not consider this a complete and final list of improvements. Let this presentation just reflect the volume of work already completed and soon to be completed as of April of 2022. And with that, I'm happy to pass this presentation back over to Delegate Solomon and take any and all questions.